I want to be clear from the beginning that I am not talking about all Protestants, but there is a wing of Protestantism that has a very erroneous theology concerning the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And it goes something like this. The Jews will go back to Israel, which they believe has been fulfilled. The Jewish temple will be rebuilt. Christians will be, quote, raptured up to heaven. See my video, Christians, you will not be raptured, to see why that's false. The Antichrist will rule the earth. Christ will return and defeat the Antichrist and reign bodily from Jerusalem for 1,000 years. Animal sacrifice will return along with the levitical priesthood. Then Christ will go back to heaven and Satan will be released. Then Christ will return again and defeat Satan. The proselytization of this theology has been so successful, mainly because of televangelists, that even Christians who don't come from the denominations that originated it believe it, including some Catholics. This theology is called millenarianism, and it has been condemned by the Catholic Church. Nobody believed this for the first 1,800 years of Christianity. So what did they get wrong? Well, for starters, Christ will return once in glory, defeat the Antichrist, and then the judgment. He won't come halfway and get some people, then come again and reign for 1,000 years, then leave and then come again. The rebuilding of the temple and the return of animal sacrifice is something no Christian should be involved with. Christ is the final sacrifice. That's why God destroyed the temple in the first place. Such a return would be sacrilegious and blasphemous. The book of Revelation is more about the persecution from and conversion of the Roman Empire. The beast and the number 666 refer to Emperor Nero, who began the persecution. The 1,000-year reign of Christ was Christendom, not a bodily reign, and not for a literal 1,000 years sometime in the future. And then the book of Revelation says, Revelation 20 verse 7, when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations. This is where I believe we are in the Revelation timeline, towards the end of the book. The whore of Babylon is Old Jerusalem, and the New Jerusalem is the Catholic Church. They got that backwards. And that's their biggest mistake. They interpret the New Jerusalem and other passages to mean the Jews would return to Israel. What they fail to realize is that we Christians are the chosen people now. The continuation of the Old Testament religion is Christianity, not post-temple rabbinical Judaism. The Jews don't get a pass because of their pedigree. They must accept Christ to be saved like everyone else. They can't reject Christ yet remain God's chosen people and then be rewarded by God with a homeland. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not a comment on the Jewish people, Judaism, or Israel. Jews are no different than any other demographic. Judaism is no different than any other false religion, and Israel is just another country. I'm neither pro nor anti-Israel, but the modern secular state of Israel is not the continuation of the biblical theocratic state of Israel. Yet these Christians believe this so much that they helped the Zionist Jews to retake Palestine. These Jews didn't want Palestine for religious purposes. They wanted a Jewish homeland, but they were happy to go along with these Christians to get what they wanted. It really was a sort of a case of Christians making their prophecy come true and then saying, oh, look what God did. See, we were right. So why do Protestants venerate Israel and the Jewish people? I think it really began at the Reformation when the Reformers declared that the Jews had the authority to determine what books should make up the Old Testament. You see, Martin Luther decided purgatory must go. The only problem was a book in the Old Testament, 2 Maccabees, clearly and explicitly taught purgatory, praying for the dead, and indulgences. Can't get rid of purgatory with that book in the Bible. So it had to go. But he couldn't just throw that one book out on his own authority. Nobody would go for that. But there was one option. The Jews had thrown out that book and 6 others around the 2nd or 3rd century because they felt they attested to Jesus as the Messiah too much. So Luther and the other reformers declared that the Jews, not the church, had the authority to determine the Old Testament, thus granting post-temple rabbinical Judaism a certain amount of authority over their new form of Christianity. So from that point on, post-temple rabbinical Judaism has been revered in Protestantism, thus clouding the Protestants' understanding of prophecy in Scripture. And since they threw out tradition, they have no idea what the traditional understanding of end-time prophecy was. They had no understanding of who the church and the fathers of the church always understood the Antichrist to be. St. Robert Bellarmine wrote a scholarly work on the subject titled The Antichrist. It was, like I said, a scholarly work based on the early church fathers, not mysticism. By the way, if you're confused because I said earlier that the beast and the number 666 refer to Nero and past events, and now I'm talking about future events concerning the Antichrist, let me clarify. The beast of Revelation and the Antichrist spoken of by Paul and John are not necessarily the same person, another error of millenarianism. According to the church, the Antichrist will be a man, not a system or an organization. He will be perfectly possessed by the devil and manifest in the final days. The millenarianists would have you believe that he will rise to power through American politics or be the head of the European Union or the UN. But according to the Fathers and St. Robert Bellarmine, he will be a Jew, and he will present himself as the Jewish Messiah and fulfill all the expectations the Jews have for the Messiah that Jesus, the true Messiah, did not. Think about it. It makes a lot more sense that the Antichrist would be a false Messiah rather than rise to power through Gentile politics. He will say, "I'm the Messiah, not Jesus," and the Jews will accept him as such. We know this because Jesus said, John chapter 5, verse 43, "I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive." Do you see how these Protestants' efforts to establish Israel and rebuild the temple only serve to bring about the Antichrist? They do it because they think Jesus will rule from the temple for 1,000 years, but that's not true. That's been condemned. One final thought concerning the Jews. It's not like their pedigree means nothing. Paul wrote in Romans 11:25, "Lest you be wise in your own conceits, I want you to understand this mystery, brethren. A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of the Gentiles come in." The Jews will come into the church after the number of Gentiles is complete. It's not clear if this will happen before or after they accept the Antichrist, but I think it makes more sense for it to be after, since Paul said in Romans 11:15, "For if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from death?" The only thing that can bring life from the dead is the return of Jesus. In other words, when the Jews accept Jesus as the Messiah, he will return. Another thought on the fullness of the Gentiles coming into the church. St. Robert Bellarmine says what this also means is not just that the Jews will enter into the church, but that what's left of the Gentiles will return to worshiping their old pagan gods. We are already seeing this. These white nationalist movements in Europe are pagan. They are worshiping the old Germanic gods like Woden, Odin, Thor, etc. Temples to these gods are being built. They are a minority for sure, but this was unthinkable just 20 years ago. And it's only going to get worse. Until my next video, God bless.